This is Summer Lynn from Chicago, Illinois. Just wanted to give a huge shout out to the Relay for all the love and support they've given my team and I. And make sure you stay tuned for all the latest boxing news.
Welcome to the motherfucking Relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, it was brought to my attention that Gervonta Davis is not ranked by Ring Magazine at either 130 or 135 pounds. That's right. That might seem alarming to some, though completely logical to others, as to why is it that all of a sudden Ring Magazine is not ranking this fighter. One of the senior staff over there at Ring Magazine, which is often referred to as the Bible of boxing, Dougie Fisher, had this to say on the subject when asked about it.
Ellie asks question, how come Tank not in ring ratings of 135 or 130? That's a great question. He was highly ranked. Yeah, so to answer your real quickly, Ellie, and then I got to bounce. Tank was ranked in the top 3, I believe, at junior lightweight, which is 130 pounds. And then he moved up to 135. He basically announced that he was done with 130, said he was struggling to make that weight, and then moved up to 135 pounds. In his lightweight debut, he fought Yuriorkis Gamboa, who was not ranked, but also Tank didn't make 135 pounds. So even though he beat Yuriorkis Gamboa, it didn't look like a world beater, didn't look great, but got the job done. Gamboa had, I think, a torn Achilles heel or something like that, but still lasted into the 12th round. He didn't actually make 135 pounds, so he couldn't rank him at lightweight. So he's kind of like in limbo, but he should get back in the rankings either at junior lightweight or at lightweight, depending on how he weighs in against Leo Santa Cruz next month.
It's important to note that while Gervonta Davis did struggle to make a lightweight while he was moving up in weight, he did eventually make the weight, which is why he was able to win that trinket title at 135 pounds, the one he's currently in possession of, that WBA regular belt. It's also important to note that that's not even the full version of the title. The full version of the title will be on the line in a little over a week's time when Vasyl Lomachenko takes on Teofimo Lopez. Now, those two guys, those are two bona fide top 10 lightweights in the world, ranked as top 10 lightweights in the world across the board, whereas Gervonta Davis is not. And the argument being levied against Gervonta Davis by Dougie Fisher and the people over there at Ring Magazine is a valid one. When's the last time that Gervonta Davis fought a live body at either 130 or 135 pounds? Currently, we know he holds no world titles at 130 pounds, and he has since moved up in weight. He vacated the title that he did hold there. Now, if he were still holding a world title there would be a precedence to rank him as a top 10 fighter. But he vacated the title that he had to move up to lightweight and fight Yuriorkis Gamboa, who is not a top 10 fighter.
He used to be,
but he isn't anymore. Gervonta Davis faced a shadow, a husk of the fighter that once was Yuriorkis Gamboa. And when facing this so obviously faded fighter, who is a shell of his former self,
he needed 12 rounds to put him away.
He needed 12 rounds to put away a one-legged Yuriorkis Gamboa who had a torn ACL, something along those lines. He only really had one good leg to stand on. And in spite of this, Gervonta Davis needed roughly 12 rounds to get that guy out of there. For a perspective, a journeyman with losses in the double digits needed less time to put away Yuriorkis Gamboa than Gervonta Davis did. Now, this lends credence to the notion that Gervonta has no reason to be ranked as a top 10 fighter in the lightweight division when that's all you've done in the lightweight division.
What the hell makes him a top 10 fighter?
Anecdotal eye tests from his sycophants? I mean, what makes Gervonta Davis a top 10 fighter in any capacity? Hell, when's the last time he even beat a top 10 fighter? It seems like he's been coattailing off the success from the Pedraza fight for at least 3, going on 4 years now?
Yes.
I do agree with Dougie Fisher's contention that a victory over Leo Santa Cruz at 130 pounds will be enough to rank Gervonta Davis as a division-by-division top 10 fighter. But, until that happens, there is a precedence to exclude him from those rank standings at either 130 or 135 pounds. Leo Santa Cruz is a full-fledged champion at 130 pounds, for better or worse, and beating him does communicate something. But until he beats him, it does make sense that they excluded him from those rank standings. Now, this isn't something that I think that either Gervonta Davis or his handlers are losing sleep over, because when it comes to Gervonta Davis and his handlers, they are less concerned with grooming an elite-level fighter and more concerned with grooming a superstar.
So you said a few times now that your goal is to make Gervonta Davis the biggest star in the sport. So
that's Floyd's objective and my objective.
So your objective
and star power has nothing to do. See, people get the two mixed up. You can be the best fighter.
Well, that's the point.
You can be the best fighter. But you can be the biggest star.
So you have no intentions on proving that Gervonta Davis may be the best fighter. You more want him to be the biggest star.
Now, why do you think that Leonard Ellaby made it a point to distinguish eliticism from star power? And why do you think he made it a point to highlight that it's his job to make Gervonta Davis a star, which is what they're trying to do? But as far as the matchmaking, it's crystal clear they're not concerned with grooming him to be an elite-level fighter.
Not with all the weight issues he's had over the years.
They are more focused with his marketability as an attraction as opposed to his malleability as a fighter. That much is obvious in how he's being guided. The matchmaking.
Yeah.
Well, why'd you go to 35 just to have to come back down to 130 to fight Leo Santa Cruz? We know what you're hoping for. You're hoping that Leo Santa Cruz's Chicano fans will show up and show out and buy that pay-per-view, so on and so forth. It's a very familiar formula. It's the exact same formula they used for Errol Spence Jr. versus Mikey Garcia.
This guy's no good unless he's fighting little guys.
Or journeymen. Guys who either aren't as good as they used to be or were never really that good to begin with. I'd say the best we've ever seen Gervonta Davis was years ago in that Jose Pedraza fight, which is why his sycophants often bring that up. But since then, what has he done that communicates eliticism? If he beats Leo, people over there at Ring will rank him, and if he beats Leo, hell, even I'll rank him for a brief period. Though if he wins and he procures that WBA super featherweight title from Leo, I question how long he's going to hang on to it. We all know about Gervonta Davis' struggles to make 130 pounds. How long do you think it'll take him to start struggling again?
Yeah, he'll probably vacate that title shortly after winning it.
In welterweight news, Manny Pacquiao faces being stripped of world welterweight title in 2021. World Boxing News understands that Manny Pacquiao faces being stripped of his WBA welterweight title if he goes through with a fight against Conor McGregor. Rumors Pacquiao would fight McGregor began in 2019. Both parties have since ratified them during the pandemic crisis. Now, it looks as though a money-spinning battle will go down for charity in the second quarter of 2021. As the current WBA welterweight champion, Pacquiao will almost certainly be relieved of the strap if he doesn't defend it in the next few months. Due to COVID-19, it's already been over a year since the Filipino senator took the belt from Keith Thurman in Las Vegas. The World Boxing Association would have given Pacquiao a grace period due to the coronavirus stopping so many fights, but they will want movement in the next 6 months or so. It's highly doubtful that Pacquiao will be able to wait another year to defend the championship. At present, Yordenis Ugas is the regular champion. The Cuban will want his shot at the full version to be recognized entirely as the real belt holder. Therefore, Pacquiao will undoubtedly have to face Ugas in 2021. If he doesn't, the WBA will be forced to act and elevate Ugas to full belt holder. As WBN previously pointed out, Pacquiao won't be able to defend his strap against McGregor, as the UFC star is 0-1 in a boxing ring. He's also unranked. McGregor would have to fight somebody else first, possibly pick up a fringe WBA title in order to be rated. So, what do I think about this news? What's my reaction? Well, if I'm being honest, I actually agree with the WBA's decision here. Manny Pacquiao can stage as many exhibition matches as he wants. He can spend the twilight years of his career fighting who he wants, when and where he wants to fight them. He can do all these things, but what he can't do is be in possession of an alphabet title, an actual world title, whilst doing so. He can't do this while neglecting his obligations as a world champion, because that's what he is.
I don't give a flying fuck how much you like him.
I don't give a shit if you're his biggest fan. I don't give a shit if he's your countryman and you adore him. I don't care about any of that. All I care about as far as this conversation is the boxing aspect of it. And as far as the boxing aspect of it goes, Manny Pacquiao is in possession of a world title. And whether you want to believe it or not, he actually could defend that title before the year is out. But if he does, it'll be in the absence of a capacity crowd, the kind of audience that could deliver Manny Pacquiao the kind of paydays that he's looking for. It's not that Manny Pacquiao can't defend that WBA title at some point this year. It's more along the lines of, is he willing to defend his title against someone like Yordenis Ugas?
Is he?
Is that guy even on his radar? And even if he were,
Even if.
would staging the fight here and now, or at some point before the year is out, deliver Manny the kind of money that he's looking for? Because rest assured, if Manny Pacquiao hasn't called it a career yet, it's because he wants to cash in on at least 1 or 2 more paydays before he does. The story now is that Manny Pacquiao means to stage this Conor-McGregor crossover fight as a charity event to help those affected by COVID, and yet this fight, this crossover exhibition match, whatever you want to call it, became a talking point before the pandemic even started. The rumors associated with this fight happening have been floating around since last year, 2019, whereas the global pandemic didn't start until roughly March of this year, 2020. I'm going to tell you what I told you before. I got nothing against Manny Pacquiao having a crossover fight with Conor McGregor, the same way I had nothing against Floyd Mayweather Jr. having a crossover fight with Conor McGregor. But the difference then was Floyd wasn't in possession of any world titles, any alphabet belts. Nothing of the sort. Whereas Manny Pacquiao is. Manny Pacquiao here today is a full-fledged world champion. And that comes with responsibilities, whether his sycophant fans want to acknowledge that or not. And if he wants to have a crossover fight, he's free to do so, but he doesn't need to be in possession of a world title in the process of doing so. Now, if you look at the timeline, the deadline they're setting for Manny Pacquiao to satisfy his mandatory would be some point next year. There is still roughly 2 to 3 months left this year. If Manny Pacquiao hits the gas on a potential Mikey Garcia fight, Mikey Garcia, who is tabbed to be one of Manny Pacquiao's next opponents, he could defend the title against Mikey Garcia as a voluntary challenger at some point before this year is out, somewhere in the Southwest, lest we forget. This Gervonta Davis versus Leo Santa Cruz fight is set to go down the Alamo Dome in front of what could be 11,000 people. Now, that's not a capacity crowd.
But it's something.
And that potential gate revenue, coupled with what pay-per-view buys the pay-per-view brings in, could be enough to get Manny Pacquiao a decent payday. Maybe not the exact kind of number that he's looking for, but something. Although, in order for that to transpire, in order for that to happen, they'd have to start really working on that fight at a feverish pace here and now to ensure that it goes down before this year is out, because once 2021 rolls around, that deadline's going to be right around the corner. Mikey Garcia says he has aspirations of becoming a 5-division champion. It's for this reason that the WBA title actually being on the line, Manny Pacquiao still being in possession of it, is a relevant talking point to this conversation, that Mikey Garcia wants to be able to pick up a world title in the welterweight division. In order for all of that to happen that way, to where you get to fight Manny Pacquiao and you get to fight for a world title, the way it would have to break down is the fight would have to go down before this year is out, at some point, late 2020, maybe December, and if he is successful in that title defense, he can then vacate the title in early 2021 and move into that crossover fight with Conor. Now, I don't know how likely this scenario is, although this would have to be the way it breaks down for everybody to get what they want. That if Mikey Garcia wants to fight for a world title and at the same time he wants Manny Pacquiao to be the champion he fights against, well, that would have to happen this year. So what happens if Mikey Garcia wins the fight? I'll tell you what happens if Mikey Garcia wins the fight. If he becomes a 5-division champion in unseating Manny Pacquiao, he would be reintegrated into the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list. If Manny is successful and he retains the title against Mikey Garcia, he will hold his current rank on the list up until the point he vacates the title. Once he vacates the title, per the rules that govern the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, no fighter absent of a world title can maintain a spot, as the list is only for winners and only for champions. Emphasis on champions here. You must be an active, reigning world champion in possession of a world title that can be defended in a contest in order to achieve and thereby maintain a rank. Should Manny vacate his WBA title, he'll lose his spot on this list, and Canelo Alvarez would move into it by process of elimination. And now that I think about it, this entire fiasco involving Manny Pacquiao and the WBA begs the question as to when are the WBA going to levy sanctions against Canelo Alvarez? Canelo Alvarez, who hasn't fought as a middleweight in well over a year. You know, he holds the WBA super title there, the full-fledged version of the title, the version of it that can be unified with that of another organization's. But Canelo Alvarez hasn't fought as a middleweight in well over a year. The last title that he won was the WBO title, and that was at 175. Currently, Canelo doesn't have a fight booked or anything, you know. He's not set to make a ring appearance at any point this year. So can we expect the WBA to enforce sanctions, deadlines on Canelo Alvarez, the way they're talking about enforcing sanctions and deadlines on Manny Pacquiao? I'm inclined to believe they will. I mean, if they're willing to do this to Manny, it's safe to say they might also be willing to do it to Canelo. Just to surmise my thoughts on this Pacquiao situation, yes, I am in agreement with the WBA. The WBA, who I'm not normally in agreement with, I regard them as one of the goofier sanctioning bodies with the goofier business practices of all the alphabets, but better still, they're not wrong here. If Manny Pacquiao means to stage a crossover fight with Conor McGregor as opposed to a legitimate, bona fide boxer, he can feel free to do so, but he doesn't need to be in possession of a world title in the process of doing so. You're a champion, you have obligations, and if you don't want to meet them, that's fine. Just hand over the belt.